I'm interjecting a little change in the schedule because I want each of the volunteers that agreed to give a short summary of their session, just key highlights of their session. Are the volunteers here at all from the water, food, and energy? Please tell me they are. Yeah? Okay. So we'll start off with one, and you're going to give a short 2 or 3 minute overview of the session. What were the key highlights, okay? And then is there a water and food also? Person? No? Okay, food, perfect, and water. Water? Over here? Someone's pointing. Okay, why don't you start? Introduce yourself, and then give a quick highlight of the energy session for all your peers. Can you turn the line off and that one on, please?
It's on now? Okay, yep. Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Hassan. I am from Western Ontario. I'm a student doing a dual degree with environmental sciences and business out there. Great interest in energy, which brought me to the energy panel discussion. We had a really diverse group of people up there giving the talk. We had some oil and energy representatives. We had someone from Electricity Canada and then 2 others who did a lot of software efficiency, building design, and utilities management. So the theme of a lot of the things that were discussed was constraints and the overlap of political, economical, and the physical constraints of energy management and what that will look like moving into the future. We also looked at the reliability, affordability, and sustainability of future energy sources and how do we meet the demand in a sustainable way moving into the future. So there was a really great quote that was thrown out by one of the panelists, and she was given the question about what do I do in the future, and an advice that was given to her, which she passed on to us, was where your interests and the world's need meets. Where your joy and the world's interest meet, and that was a really great takeaway point. I think I'm past my 2 minutes mark, so thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, where's our food or water? Yeah. Great. So speak loudly there, if you can.
Hi. Do I need to stand up?
Nope.
Okay, good. So I was at the food session, and basically I think the discussion generally focused around 2 different food systems. One for the affluent who go and buy their fresh, organic, local produce, and one for the people who shop in the center aisles of the supermarkets, buying from the industrial food system. And just to, I guess, put some perspective on this, Canadians spend $84 billion on food per year, and 70% of that goes through the large big box stores. So the local food revolution, while I think important and very positive, has to be understood as being a very, very small player right now compared to that larger big box system. Food was also discussed as a gateway into a lot of other challenges and opportunities, whether it's healthcare. Well, I think healthcare was the main thing we discussed, but also trying to grow a sense of community. While we weren't discussing this, food is linked often with people's sense of self and self-confidence. So I think that seeing food as a way into exploring other issues was one of the important things that we brought up. And I think that's probably all I had to say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. That's great. Thanks very much. And who was the water? Where was the water person? No? Oh, back here? Okay, perfect. Okay, you want to just pass the mic back for me?
Sorry? Summarize.
Just speak into it. They'll turn it on. Yep.
So we just kind of touched base on water. We talked about water sewer systems, the different regulations and the complexities around that, as well as the economic costs of water, and one thing that struck out, I think, to all of us was that we are the 1%, that we're the leaders, we're the 1% that really care. And they're talking about pricing water, especially in Canada, because the one way to make the other 99% really implement change is through pricing. So I think... and also the interconnections. So water, like you mentioned, without water, we can't survive. Without water, we don't have energy, we don't have food. And so water is something nice. I think Canada should really be on top of that, because it's not going to be plentiful forever.
Thank you very much. Okay, now on to our session, and I'm really excited about this because we have tried for a number of years to integrate the emerging leaders more into Globe. As I said at the beginning, we always talked about the vision of this forum to raise your voice. Raise your voice in catalyzing change, raise your voice in finding those solutions, and raising your voice to knock down those challenges of the companies, governments, not-for-profit, and so forth, trying to become more sustainable. So this year, we actually have a session dedicated to the next generation. And we have 2 people out of the 4 here, up here, that are going to represent you and your thoughts on that. So I'm really excited to pass on. I'm going to introduce Lior Rothschild, who is the co-founder and director of DIG, one of the young entrepreneurs looking for solutions, to invite you to be engaged by this panel and introduce our panelists. So, Lior? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mike. As the baby boom generation moves into an era of retirement, young people entering the workforce today are more connected, more socially minded, and more entrepreneurial than any previous generation before them. A recent survey by Angus Reid noted that the millennial generation is embarking on entrepreneurship at twice the rate of the Canadian average. Unfortunately, however, 50% of them fail in their first year of business, which suggests that better preparation is required. I've been invited to moderate this panel because of my background as an oil and gas professional. But as Mike introduced me to you today, I'm currently taking risks as an ecopreneur in my own entrepreneurial venture. I'm also a member of Generation X, and as followers of the giant footsteps left by the baby boomers, and as early adopters of some of the creative innovations that are very common among your generation, the millennial generation. We have a special role in this conversation. It's really up to us to help be that bridge to find ways to advise the baby boomers on how to capitalize on the change that's coming, that's inevitable, but also how to mentor the young people to reach their full potential in a rapidly changing world. Today's climb to the top looks less like that stereotypical corporate ladder that we all have in our minds. It's more like a jungle gym. And I believe that the panel that we've assembled here today, which have gone through already a rigorous process to join us here today, are a reflection of this. Each in unique ways is finding creative solutions to relevant and complex problems while mastering their field in very diverse ways, in completely different ways. I'm pleased to introduce them to you, but also let you know that there's a panel of judges in the back of the room here, and I'm going to introduce them very briefly. And this judging panel is really has a very difficult job to select among 4 fantastic people on our panel. 2 of them that will actually be on the panel on Thursday at Globe. in a much larger session, but dealing with some of the same issues and concerns of preparing the next generation of environmental leaders. So very quickly, the panel on the back is made up by Mike Gerbis, who was just up here, and Mike's really a visionary behind why we're all here today, the Emerging Environmental Leaders Forum. Gavin Pitchford, who is the founder and chief talent officer of Delta Management Group, and the visionary behind the Global Clean 50. And very happy to have Kim Rapagna, who's the manager for CSR and sustainability at Target Canada, Target being the platinum sponsor for this event today. And so very happy to have you here. And Elliot Weinstein, who is the project coordinator at Golder Associates and was one of the key people in putting this event together here today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the panel. I'm going to introduce them in the same order that they appear in your delegate book, and then invite them in that same order to come up and share their perspectives. So I'm going to read them all to you, and then invite them to come up. So the first panelist is Rosalind Dodd. Rosalind is the owner of Lila Eco Spa and Studio. She received her Bachelor of Commerce from the University of Calgary, majoring in entrepreneurship and innovation, and has completed her CSRP certification. She's currently completing her Executive Master's in Sustainability and Leadership from Arizona State University's Global Institute for Sustainability. Her master's thesis will focus on the power of entrepreneurial thinking as a leadership tool for opportunity identification and shared value creation for an organization. After mentoring under serial entrepreneur Mogan Smet at Dirt Environmental Solutions for 3 years, Rosalind left to pursue her own entrepreneurial passions. In February of 2013, she bought Lila Eco Spa and Yoga Studio in Calgary as an opportunity to demonstrate the power of a social enterprise business model that supports its local community, environment, and economy. Lila Eco Spa and Studio is now the first B Corp certified spa and yoga studio in North America. She is and has won awards for Best Small Business, Environmental Stewardship, and Community Economic Development, and has tripled in size over the course of the past year. Philip Garver, who's sitting to Rosalind's left, Garber, is an environmental consultant. He was raised in Toronto and Germany. Philip heeded the call of the mountains and has called British Columbia home since 2009. Volunteer work and travels in South Africa and South America inspired him to study the science underlying environmental systems. Frustrated to learn about the state of our natural surroundings, Philip shifted his focus towards applied solutions to environmental issues. First, he developed a strategy to manage urban wildlife at the University of British Columbia. Then in Australia, Philip was part of the University of Queensland Carbon Lab, which is at the leading edge in developing carbon management frameworks. There, his research focused on GHG life cycle assessments for unconventional fossil fuels and renewables. Philip is intrigued by the potential of business to facilitate real change at the nexus of energy, water, and First Nations engagement. Philip is a passionate member of the UBC Okanagan Outdoor Club, which lures students with adventure and reconnects them with their natural environment. Volunteer work with organizations such as Water Lucha and Carbon Neutral Antarctica serve as an example for Philip's quest to change the human-environment relationship through innovative and realistic approaches. He was recently gifted as an environmental professional in training through Eco Canada and a biologist in training at the BC College of Applied Biology. Awaiting his convocation in June 2014, Philip is currently working as an independent consultant and heading into his third season with BC's Wildfire Cruise. Nayo, thank you. Nayo Hata is a resource economist at University of British Columbia. Nayo is, I practiced that too, darn. Nayo is a resource economist at the University of British Columbia. She's based in the Fisheries Economics Research Unit at the Fisheries Center and works on projects with the Department of Forest Resources Management in the Faculty of Forestry. Her research focuses on the economics of sustainable resource management. Recent projects have included exploring the use of economic instruments for adaptation to climate change in forestry, developing an Eco2 index to assess the ecological and economic performance of 151 countries and assessing the potential economic impacts of oil spills. She was the founding president of the Vancouver Urban Farming Society and has written for the Globe and Mail, Vancouver Observer, and Edible Vancouver. Nayo has also worked as an environmental consultant and policy analyst in the private and nonprofit sectors. She completed a Bachelor of Science in Biological Science at the University of Guelph, a postgraduate diploma in environmental engineering applications at Conestoga College, and a master's degree in food and resource economics at the University of British Columbia. She's a certified environmental practitioner in training with the Canadian Environmental Certification Approval Board and a professional biologist with the Alberta Society of Professional Biologists. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have Alima Jamal, the Executive Director of the Laurier Project. Alima completed her BA in International Relations and a Master's of Science in Management Science and Engineering from Stanford University. Her current role, Alima is tasked with building the Laurier Project's strategic direction and capabilities in support of its vision to develop a project that will have long-term transformational impact on the nation. The Laurier Project's board is composed of distinguished cross-sector leadership, primarily Canadian CEOs and civil society leaders, who are converging on an organizational mandate in either the environmental or education sectors. Alima was previously consultant at McKinsey & Company based in Toronto. She has a passion for international development, spearheading the establishment of Kenya's first public school computer resource center and acting as a research assistant at the Aga Khan University's Asia-Africa Summit for Chronic Diseases. She's been awarded Canada's Top 20 Under 20 Award, was a finalist for the Rhodes Scholarship, and is a recipient of the Queen's Golden and Diamond Jubilee medals. Ladies and gentlemen, your panel for this afternoon, or for this morning. And I'd like to call to the podium Rosalind Dodd.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today, and I am absolutely blown away by the level of conversation that has been had here already, the level of knowledge and engagement in this room, and by my fellow panelists. This is an unbelievable experience, and something I'm very honored and pleased to be able to give some insights on. As Leora mentioned, I am currently completing my master's in sustainability and leadership. So this topic in terms of leadership, environmental leadership, is something that I'm focused on each and every day. And I think that I can bring an interesting perspective to the panel today, given that I am, one, a millennial. I am a passionate, excited, idealistic person trying to make positive change in the world, trying to navigate the world of finding a job and being able to make a difference. And I'm also an employer. I own a small company in Calgary, and I have 30 employees. And so every day I am hiring, motivating, leading, trying to inspire, and hopefully not firing too many people. And many of them are part of the millennial generation, and many of them are not. So there's interesting challenges that go along with that. And so I wanted to start by looking at why leadership is so important and why this is such a topic of conversation. And I have heard through personal conversations, secondhand conversations, and a lot of times at conferences that leadership, as our generation moves into the workforce, that there is, one, an incredible opportunity for change and exciting things to happen. But there's also a risk with all of the knowledge and all of the work that has been done leading up to this, leaving the workforce and leaving us idealistic people to hold the bag. There was a recent HR survey that was done that looked at the current drivers of human capital and talent management strategy. So what companies were doing, what their biggest risks were and their biggest concerns were when dealing with their human capital strategy. And the top two responses that made up close to 85% of the concerns were the current or imminent leadership gaps and the lack of desired knowledge and skills in future employees. And so there's no wonder that you can Google leadership and find literally 100,000 hits. There are hundreds of thousands of books on leadership, and as one scholar puts it, leadership is one of the most observed and yet least well understood phenomena on Earth. What is becoming apparent to me is that leading companies are becoming less and less about management, and more about leadership, more and more about change management. And I would argue that in this space, in the environmental and sustainable field, where we are entering things that no business has ever seen, no nation has ever seen, no city or society has ever seen, is that we're not only leaders, but we are pioneers. We are pioneers in a new era of business and society and forging ahead into this rapidly changing world. And I know to some people that sounds absolutely terrifying, but I'm going to guess that the reason we're all here in this room today is because it sounds like a fantastic opportunity. But it's an opportunity that we need to be prepared for. And so I wanted to capture the top 3 things that I thought would be necessary in terms of being a good leader and moving forward in this space. And the first one isn't actually about being an environmental leader at all. It's just about being a good leader. And that is to know thyself. And that is to understand yourself, your attitudes, your opinions, your personality that causes you to make the decisions you do. Studies have proven that people who are the least effective in leadership roles are the ones who understand themselves the least. And so being able to understand a situation and yourself is very closely linked. The second major bucket is to have flexibility and adaptability to change. We all know how quickly things are changing and how quickly we need to act to keep up. And we're entering a time where we don't necessarily have a clear path forwards. We don't necessarily know where we're going. We know where we are now and we have an idea of where we need to get to, but what we actually do to get there is less clear. And so this really exemplifies the idea of more entrepreneurial thinking, moving from that management thinking of we know where we are, we know what we have, and we know where we're going, is we know what we have, but we don't necessarily know where we're going, and that's really, really scary to some people. So being able to embrace that and live in that is a very powerful thing. And the third is to take a broader, longer perspective. And so we've heard a fair bit already today about taking a systems approach to truly understand the relatedness of people, business, and society. And Bob Page said this morning that everything is connected to everything else. And so there is an incredible amount of opportunity for innovation, for new findings, for whatever it is, when you truly go outside not only of your job description or your business unit or your business operations, beyond your supply chain, into your value chain, and into the whole global perspective of what your business really does out there. And in terms of the longer term perspective, we all know that focusing on the next 3 months is not the way forward, is that short-term perspectives are important and we need to celebrate those short-term wins, but we need to be planning for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and the next 20 years. And so I think that we can probably all agree that the time for change, the time to act, the time to unleash our inspired, idealistic selves on the world is now. I think there's been an incredible amount of work that has gone before us, and I think that that is worthy of praise. But I think there's also an incredible amount of opportunity that's out there for us to go and get. And so as a final closing thought, I would just like to say that I, for one, think that we need to stop referring to being idealistic as a bad thing, because I think being optimistic and being sure of ourselves, of having that opportunity to go out there and really knock people dead, is an incredible skill and an incredible thing that we should all embrace and support.
Philip Garber.
Hey, thank you. I just want to thank the panel for having me get up here, join the panel, and thank you, Lear, for the introduction. So, why does this topic matter to me? In the introduction, you kind of heard, in the last 12 months, I was a full-time student, I was a part-time student. I was seasonally employed, I was part-time employed, I was underemployed, I was unemployed. And most recently, I was self-employed. So I'm realizing how tough this transition is into the full-time career. I'm fortunate to have the right group of friends around me to pick me back up, and I'm fortunate to be stubborn enough to keep on going down this path. So my motivation is to help blaze this trail for the next cohorts, as we'll need every ally we can get. So I want to start by sharing my experience of being self-employed. So after months of sending out applications, I finally got a call from the Okanagan Nation Alliance, which is a First Nations government a couple hours east of here. They asked me to come in. So their staff had generated a couple of questions, and the manager asked me which topic I'd be best capable of addressing given a certain budget. I pointed to one, and he said, "Okay, can you do it?" Of course I can, yes. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I submitted the report last week. I heard back last night. The manager was happy, very happy actually, and said I should look at their website for further full-time positions. So there's a couple of things I took away from this, and other youth could probably learn from this too. Number one, you got to be flexible. You got to be open-minded. I had no experience working with First Nations government, and it wasn't exactly the dream job in Vancouver where I could suit up and enjoy the view on the mountains from one of these nice skyscrapers here. Number two, you got to jump on every opportunity you get. You got to demonstrate that you're willing to go the extra mile, that you're willing to make the extra effort, and that'll reflect in your reports and your references and the next step. And number three is be positive. At times I felt overwhelmed with the amount of workload. I had literally no mentorship. I had no one to go ask things about. But I took it as a challenge, or my friends told me, take it as a challenge. Many of my peers, guys I graduated with, did not have this positive experience and continued to work at a coffee shop or at a ski resort. So there's clearly a disconnect between recruiters and graduates. So there might be some lessons employers can get out of this too. The main factor, the main key, is that my supervisor or the manager, he showed trust in me. He gave me an opportunity to work on a question that to him was low cost, it was work intensive, and yielded a potentially high reward. Let me elaborate on this a little more. I lived in Germany for a couple of years, and we can all agree that Germany has a strong economy. They face tremendous demographic and talent issues. Managers there routinely collect questions from their team and develop these, but these questions might be interesting but not a high priority and just not very attractive they're not high priority enough to bring in professional consultants either. So they approach professors and course unions and ask the students, which questions would you be interested in? So they hire the students as consultants. The students can work on these projects as a research project, as an honors project, directed studies, and it's combined with a little stipend too. As a student, I would jump on that opportunity right away. And for employers, you'll be surprised how far little faith will go in terms of loyalty down the road when you think about retaining your talent. I'm not going to forget who gave me my first opportunity. So now that you've attracted your talent, you want to retain it. I've thought of 4 different key points. Number 1 is build personal relationships. That could be through extracurriculars, but the main point is you need two-way communication. If we are supposed to learn what the boomers learn in 30 years, in the next 5 years before the boomers retire, there's got to be communication. We got to make sure that we're learning, but we're also teaching, and we can put it in our own words. Number 2 is we, as this generation, we care more than ever about what we do. We need a purpose. If we want to stay with the company, we need a purpose. So there's volunteering opportunities. Make time in your work schedule for pro bono. More importantly, have a business model that rocks. Have a business model that, for example, integrated sustainability is an engineering firm in Calgary. They've gone from 5 or 6 employees in the last 2 years to over 50 because their business model rocks. And then supply chain efforts, for example, Apple, Intel, and Walmart. Those are things we recognize, and I assume Target has these too. Give us a challenge. make sure we feel like we're being listened to. So there's entrepreneurship or internal incubator programs. A West Coast-based engineering firm called RJC, they have an incubator program, and make sure that we feel like our opinion matters. I'd like to finish by quoting a good friend of mine, what she said at a conference about 2 months ago. Youth are not the leaders of tomorrow. We are the leaders of today. Trust us to find a way. We're the most educated generation ever. We're the most socially minded and actively volunteering generation in a while. Take a leap of faith and give youth a chance, because I trust that we are capable of solving today's problems. Thank you.
Nayohata.
The industry is suffering from an image problem. Who has heard this type of language before? Right. We could be talking about any number of different industries, but sometimes this language comes up now and again. And this statement concerns me because it externalizes a problem. It says that the problem is in the eye of the person who's perceiving the problem, and that what you need to do to correct the problem is just to speak more loudly until that person is convinced to change their mind. But an image problem is actually offering valuable information about how your company or your business or your industry needs to change and improve. So see the problem not so much as a threat, something to defend yourself against, but as an opportunity to help you learn and improve. Our generation, the millennials, are both an important human resource for business as well as an important consumer demographic. And by 2025, we will represent 75% of the global workforce. We were raised with the concept of voting with our dollars to support products that we believe in. And we've extended that concept to voting with our hours. We spend our time working for companies that we believe in and we want to support. If young people aren't interested in working for your company, they're probably also not buying your product, or if they are, they're looking for alternatives. So a perceived image problem offers useful information about how a growing and maturing segment of consumers, investors, and skilled workers views your product or your business. There are many words that describe the values of our generation: sustainability, transparency, balance, respect. But in order to learn and adapt both to a new and broader range of values emerging and in a broader and more diverse workforce, businesses need to be willing to adopt a practice of humility and self-awareness. They need to be willing to ask questions, to accept feedback, and to learn to do better. Self-awareness means accepting that you don't have all the answers and learning. It can mean being willing to challenge your own beliefs and assumptions, and even working to unlearn patterns that are no longer serving you. It also involves surrendering, letting go of the feeling that you need to be in control. Importantly, becoming self-aware demands that you place humility above hubris and a higher value on truth than on your ability to rationalize or justify your actions. I'd like to share one example that illustrates the importance of self-awareness in business. This example is from an industry that has suffered arguably the most severe image problem of the last half century. Any guesses as to what it might be? It's an example from the Atlantic Canadian sealing industry, seal hunting. So over the last decade alone, the sealing industry has seen its landed values fall from $35 million in 2006 to less than $2 million in 2012. Why? Because the global public is concerned about the way in which seals are hunted and killed. Starting with the EU in 2009, then followed by Russia and Taiwan, the Canadian sealing industry has seen one country after another shut their borders to Canadian seal products.
But over this same period, we've also witnessed a trend that could have offered the salvation of the sealing industry. We talked about it in one of our breakout sessions this morning. The sustainable food movement. Stay with me here. Demand is strong and growing for foods that have low chemical and energy inputs and are free of added hormones and antibiotics. So the consumers are willing to pay a premium for organic meat from animals that were raised in a natural environment and killed in a humane manner. And from an environmental standpoint, the seal hunt is sustainable. According to Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada, harp seal populations are at their highest level in 60 years. Harp seals also require none of the inputs of conventional livestock, and the sealing industry provides economic activity for coastal and remote and northern communities in Quebec and Newfoundland and Labrador. The sealing industry could have looked at how to improve hunting practices and then capitalized on consumer preferences for sustainable food. Instead, they focused their research efforts on proving that what they were already doing was right, and their marketing efforts on promoting their existing products overseas. In pursuing efforts to convince the public that they were right, rather than accepting feedback and looking for ways to improve their product, the sealing industry missed a golden opportunity. Just think about it from your own perspective. Would you personally rather work for a sealing industry association or a sustainable seafood certification organization like Oceanwise? This is just one example at the industry level that shows how important self-awareness can be to business. The art of asking, how can we do better, can help to make your business and your product more appealing not only to younger workers, but to a more diverse workforce, including women and people from different backgrounds and cultures. Businesses that adopt a practice of self-awareness will be more prepared to adapt to new and changing values of global workers in the years and decades to come. So it's really important, it's of the essence that companies and industries listen to the public and to their workers and take that feedback to heart and learn to change and improve. Thank you.
And Alima Jamal.
Thanks so much for having me here today. It's such an honor and a privilege. So I'm going to start by asking you guys a question, and I'd appreciate if you can raise your hands. And I'm hoping you raise your hands, because then otherwise my whole speech is thrown out the window. So how many of you value a job that will enable you to develop and grow some transferable skill sets that you can apply across the board? Okay, good. Step one achieved. How about a job that provides mentorship? Okay, good. How about working for a company that encourages environmentally sustainable values? All right, so here we can see that there are a bunch of different things our generation values in the jobs that we're trying to search for, right? So of these three that I mentioned, let's go back to that first one, building a transferable skill set. How many of you would put that as your number one priority on the three that I mentioned? All right, okay, so maybe 30–40% of you. So this is just to illustrate that, yes, we need to think about sustainable jobs, sustainable career paths, but these are not the only considerations we have. So now, if we're going with challenging that premise that it's about sustainability, the next question we ask is, what are young people really looking for in their jobs? And to me, it's a question of a holistically sustainable career path. So what does that mean? To me, it means one that encourages work-life balance and some level of stability, encourages opportunities for growth, development, and career advancement. And yes, social conscious and environmental values are incredibly important. So what can companies put in place to make this happen? One is they can inspire youth to contribute their energies, passions, and experience. But to me, this doesn't just mean that we have a voice and we speak out to our bosses and our colleagues. It means that these companies also have to take into account what we're saying. So let me give you a couple examples of companies who are doing this really effectively. Google has created a tremendous buzz. How many of you have friends that want to work for Google at some point? Yeah, exactly. So one program that they've done that's been really effective is providing flex time to their employees to pursue projects that are of their personal passions. And this has been incredibly successful at engaging them. I served a pharmaceutical client when I was at McKinsey who held a competition every 2 years to challenge everyone across their 40,000 employees, front lines all the way to middle management, to put forward an idea of what could make that company better. And it always had a theme. So it could have been more sustainable, it could have been lower costs, it could have been higher profit. And not only was that winning idea publicized, the company actually implemented that and put it into action. And that was a very powerful example of engagement. And then at McKinsey, the company that I used to work for as well, they do something called Practice Olympics every year, where they try to generate the next big ideas in client service. And teams will come together from across all different areas of the organization. The entries are judged at the local, district, and regional levels. And then this year, the finalists are flown to Athens. So how can you argue with that? So that's the first one, providing opportunities for engagement and for a voice to be heard. The second is to provide opportunities for intergenerational mentorship. So have any of you guys seen the show Undercover Boss? Okay, so if you haven't heard of it, basically what happens is the very senior C-level executive in the organization goes to work in the front lines with the hope that no one will know who they are. And they get a little taste for what the realities of the job really are like. So companies don't necessarily have to do something this drastic, but being able to provide an opportunity to understand both sides of the equation, from the front lines to some of the challenges at the senior level, enable us to be more constructive in the change we can inspire within an organization. And then the last thing is really, again, around building this sustainability and environmental mentorship. And what I want to say here is, as a generation, it may be important to us. I think it's important to everyone here in this room, but we can't always expect that this is something that is going to be given or available to us within our companies. What we really should be striving towards is working for companies that enable us to build these skill sets, but also enable us to provide a voice, to contribute, and hopefully begin to infuse this mentality, because that's what really change is all about. So, just to recap, we're talking about development opportunities, we're talking about mentorship, we're talking about opportunities to really be able to think critically and to contribute and to infuse change from all different sectors of society. So I want to leave you today with some career advice, because that was one of the prompting questions that we were asked prior to the panel. And of course, I have a very limited body of experience, but this is what I've learned so far. The first thing is surround yourself with individuals that will push you and mentor you, build your skill sets, encourage you to think more critically about the world around you. Second, learn about how to align interests. And that is actually a very consultancy term. But what that means is find common ground. It doesn't just apply to your professional lives, but to your personal lives as well. If you really want to infuse a sustainable mindset, or if your goals are different, if you can appeal to someone else's position and to their perspective, you're going to be much more effective at influencing change. And the last thing is to be open and learn as much as you can about all sectors. We're moving into a world where, as cliche as it may sound, borders are shrinking. We no longer work in the silos of one industry, one sector, or one function, and our panel here is proving that to us today. So the more exposure you all build to different perspectives and ways of thinking, the more you'll be able to apply these mindsets in a way that will benefit you in your career. And again, back to the basics, influence that change. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you to all the panelists, and I think you probably see that the judging panel has a very difficult job ahead of them. But we do have a little bit more time, not a lot, but I thought we'd do something a little different. Definitely want to hear some questions from the audience, but maybe we'll take, if you'll bear with me, 3 questions at the same time, and then we'll throw that to the panel and have a bit of a dialogue about that in terms of who wants to weigh in on some of these issues. So if I could get a show of hands, we have a... Okay. Do we have a roving microphone? Oh, okay. This is the roving microphone. I'll hand it over to Allison here.
Lovely logistics. We've got 2 mics going around. Oh, there's one hidden there. Look at that.
Oh, this one's on.
At the same time, okay?
Kia ora, tēnā koe, kia ora nao. Amy Greenwood, here with the Fraser Basin Council based in Vancouver, but I'm also on the board of directors with the Connecting Environmental Professionals, and I have the honour of overseeing the mentorship program that Connecting Environmental Professionals runs, and I'll be speaking about that at the closing event, so I know more about that now. What my question is, and my grapple within my day job, is how can companies not only do better, but do better at engaging young people in all of the things they do, including their decision-making processes. So who is making the decisions, and how are young people part of that decision-making process? Thanks.
So you guys got that? Engaging young people in decision-making processes. We'll take 2 more questions. Here, why don't you use this mic?
Given that there's so many young people interested in pursuing different innovative ideas, but maybe not interested in getting into the corporate world, do you have thoughts and ideas around how they can get startup capital? Like, is crowdsourcing a legitimate way for us to try and initiate different business ventures?
So raising capital, and for entrepreneurial ventures? Okay. Crowdsourcing as a question. And we'll take 1 more. Oh, we got one here. Great.
Enjoyed all your guys' talks. We often talk as a young generation about how companies can take our voices into account, and I think we have a lot to contribute. But I'm always also conscious of the fact that, at least for me, I feel like I don't have all the answers. So, some of you touched on advice for our generation, but what else can we work on to become more influential, sort of decision makers or influencers within our organizations?
Okay, so advice for young people to be more influential. Who wants to weigh in here? Lima, do you want to kick us off, Lima?
Sure. So maybe I'll provide a really short answer to a couple of the different questions. So to the last one first, what can we do to become more influential? I think at a very young age, the challenge is when you're placed in positions where you're interacting with senior members of your company, you worry that your voice isn't heard. And what I found is really effective is actually something as simple as being able to ask a couple critical questions. And it's not necessarily about showing what you know, showing that you know everything. It's about bringing humility into the equation and encouraging people to rethink their thought processes and their actions based on the questions that you ask. And I think, to me, that's a really tremendous skill set to be able to learn how to build. I'll actually just answer that and then give other people a chance.
Well, I'd like to build on that, too. I'd like to answer the same question about how companies can engage young people more effectively. And so then I'll answer it from the business side of things. So it may sound trite, but businesses need to start from a foundation of genuine appreciation for their younger workers. They need to consider what are young workers contributing to what is their unique contribution to the business? Why are they essential to success? And what can be learned from younger workers so that there is respect for younger workers is fostered from the beginning. And then once this foundation of respect is built, then ask them. Businesses need to be asking how younger workers can be more effectively engaged, because it's going to be different for each business, for each industry. But if you have effective communication with your younger workers, you can engage them by just simply asking what they need and how you can improve.
I don't really think I have too much to add. It's really just comes down to communication. That has to be two-way, and that trust. That, as I tried to mention earlier, it's just the trust level, the personal relationships, and the communication. Yeah, pretty much all said.
I will maybe try and tackle the other ones a little bit, because I think those are all fabulous answers. I think that idea of asking what you can do is trying to find a mentor within your organization. Find someone, maybe it's not in your organization, but someone that you can emulate, someone who you can go and ask and say, what do I need to do to get better at this? How can I tackle these problems and become more influential? As far as the startup capital goes, I'm not personally that familiar with crowdfunding. I think that there's some great opportunities out there. There's all sorts of really interesting platforms. A friend of mine is a pentathlete and just raised her training capital for the year through an athletic crowdfunding platform. I think one of the really useful things, and again, I'll go back to the entrepreneurial thinking on this, is the idea of bootstrapping. Is when you're starting out, do it as cheaply as you possibly can, and expect that you're going to keep on doing it that way for as long as you possibly can. Even when the money starts coming in, keep on bootstrapping, because you never know when it's going to still be there. So trying to make sure that you are being innovative, start in your parents' basement or whatever it is. Start with the friends, families, and fools for the startup capital is always a good place to go to as well. And the last question, engaging young people in the decision-making process. I think I get the impression that young people are really excited to be engaged in the decision-making process, and given the opportunity, maybe given some guidelines, what it is that you're looking for, trying to establish some sort of the overarching goals, where it is that you're going, and allow people to try and get themselves there, because micromanaging is the worst. And so if you can have that set of, this is where we're trying to go, what can you bring to help get us there? I think that idea of being empowered and being engaged in that way would be really, I would respond personally very well to that. So I hope that helps.
Mind if I jump in again? I just had a few more ideas come up to how we can be more influential. I think from my experience with the Forest Service, it's a lot about how much weight you pull, how much influence, how much weight do you pull about your reputation. So as you come in, you're pretty green. You don't have any reputation. You're the new guy, and you have to distinguish yourself. Use those first projects that you get to distinguish yourself, and come up over and over again with creative questions and, hey, could we not do this on this operational perspective? Can we not change it somehow? It doesn't have to be applied, but at least make your voice heard and make sure they're acknowledging it. And then maybe through lunch and learns or stuff like similar events, just distinguish yourself as an expert in a certain field, so that after a while somebody might come to you, hey, what do you think about this? So just slowly but surely build a reputation within an organization.
So a quick comment, and then I have a question for the panel. But the quick comment is in relation, I just wanted to build on that question about funding and crowdsourcing. I just, for my business, went through a whole round of capital raising. We wound up going to a traditional lending institution to get the money, but we looked at lots of things. We talked to venture capitalists, and when you're in the venture capitalist world, people want a chunk of your business. They want to own a chunk of your business in return for lending you money. I think the thing that you always have to think about is, what do you actually want to achieve, in terms of lending that money or borrowing that money. I think a crowdsourcing initiative would be great with regards to engaging your primary stakeholder or audience group. But if you want to raise money from anyone, whether it's through crowdsourcing or venture capitalists or through a traditional lending institution, you really need to get into the details of your business and prove your business model, just like it for any industry, whether it's a tech startup or whether it's a traditional industry. You need to understand the cash flow projections and really get into the balance sheets and to demonstrate to people why this is a sound investment, prove your business model, show them where the demand is coming from, what your market segments are, and have some kind of track record already in place before you go to the market and ask for money.
I'd just like to add something to that. Through my involvement with the Vancouver Urban Farming Society, this has come up several times as well, because urban farmers operate small businesses and need capital to purchase equipment and other things. And so this issue comes up again and again, and we had a captive person here from Van City, and we need to be talking to people like Van City who are interested in supporting small businesses, local businesses, to encourage them to find ways to help small businesses and young people to find the financing that they need. And so, if she's still around, we should be asking the Van City people about this too.
I think we have one more question from the panel.
So we're almost out of time, but I think you guys deserve a couple more questions. So why don't we do one more round of 3 questions?
Awesome. Okay, great. So let's do that. Let's open it up again to 3 more questions. We've got a question back there. I'll lend you the mic over here. We'll go there first.
My question is mainly about the intergenerational discussion. When I started out working with adults, they didn't take me very seriously at first. And over the last 2 years, I finally made a proper relationship and we're able to work effectively with each other. But what are some ways you have, in terms of your experience or any advice you have, on how us as youth can interact with adults more efficiently and make them kind of appreciate what we're saying without spending 2 years of just building up that kind of relationship? Thank you.
My question is also around advice to us, I guess. And thank you for your talks. They were all great. But sometimes I find like I have a bunch of different ideas, and this is maybe similar to the crowdsourcing question, but it's not around funding. It's more how can we focus what we want to do and kind of have that patience to not like be somewhere for more than a year and be like, give it that chance. Because I find sometimes, we have a bunch of ideas and we want results like pretty fast, but you need to kind of wait and learn.
So it's kind of a similar theme to both of those, and hopefully you can answer those both quickly. But we've got one more here. We'll take all 3.
Thank you. I'm Cornelia with Net Zero Waste, and I'm wondering if you can provide your thoughts on how young leaders can influence change so that companies, for example, can become more sustainable. And there's the view that you can do it from inside of the company. So, for example, I'm thinking inside of oil and gas or mining industry versus the outside, where you risk being labeled as an activist and as a hippie. So how do we young leaders balance those different options, and how can we work with that?
So yeah, kind of a similar theme emerging here, and I'll just add one more to your plate as well, because in all of in a bunch of your discussions, mentorship was kind of something that kept coming up, and I think that might be playing a role into this theme too. So I'm curious to know if you have or had mentors in your time. So, yeah.
Happy to start. So I guess maybe start from the last question and move back up. Yes, to mentorship. Every chance I get. It's incredibly powerful, incredibly useful, and it doesn't always have to be a formal mentorship relationship. Is that there's opportunities to learn and grow and grow and glean really useful information from all types of people, whether they are older, younger, whatever it is. There's a lot of information out there. I think that mentorship, and I think that will be a really important aspect as this generational shift happens as well. There's so much information, so many resources, so many skills that the Gen X's and baby boomers have built up, that if we can capture those and move forward with those, I think that's a huge opportunity. In terms of influencing change and becoming more sustainable within your organization, either inside or outside, I think that there is an opportunity, no matter your role, to become more sustainable. Is that we don't need to necessarily be looking for the manager of sustainability role or the environmental practitioner role. That doesn't necessarily have to be our job title for it to be part of our job description. Is no matter what we're doing, no matter where we are, there is an opportunity to be more sustainable in it, and try and share that with your colleagues or coworkers. I do not let people come into my company with a paper cup without getting berated for it, and they know that. And it's part of our culture, but it's an opportunity to kind of grow and learn. And it's not necessarily about the paper cup, but it's thinking about those decisions that we're making and trying to encourage other people to do the same thing. And it was said this morning that if people are a bit more educated, if people are a bit more aware, they're more likely to make those better, more sustainable decisions. And then I think that the second question almost answers the first question a little bit, is how to build the reputation and build the relationships with the older generation, is by proving that we have that patience and that we are in it for the long haul, and we do mean this. We're not just here for the next 6 months so we can flit off to something else. And so I think that the importance then becomes to find the job that really speaks to you, or somewhere that you feel that you can really sink your teeth into and really make that difference that you're hoping to make, rather than, hopefully you have the luxury to choose the job that you want rather than taking a jobs for job's sake. And building that reputation, I think, is just important to, again, show that dedication, show the interest, show that you are learning and growing, and that you want to be challenged and you want to know more. I think the opportunity to try, and hopefully in an environment where you are allowed to fail and learn from it and then try again, that's a fabulous way to build a reputation and show what it is you're capable of and what you want to do.
All right, I'll try to take it from here and not repeat too much. There are a lot of good points in there. So did I have mentors? Thought about it quickly. Yes, I've had many, many mentors. Some stuck around for a little longer, some not so long, or we didn't connect as well. But I had a lot of advice along the way, especially I met someone here 2 years ago from Golder, and I haven't met him since, but he's been helping me through emails, like how to improve my professional writing, just certain questions. How do I even write a proposal that I needed a couple of months ago? There's these little points. Then how do we influence change or without being labeled as an activist? I want to quote Kylie Taylor. She said something along the lines 2 years ago, my friends label me as a sellout and my colleagues label me as a hippie. That shows that I've managed to make the split. So take risks. Don't hesitate being the hippie. Don't hesitate being the activist. Just take risks and speak up, especially here. The next couple of days, speak up. Just get outside of your comfort zone. They might not every decision maker might grab our idea, but we'll plant a seed in their minds. Just speak up. How can we focus and develop patience? Build up a network around you that will keep picking you up, that you're not alone. I see a lot of familiar faces here, I think 20 or 30 over the last 2 years that I met. That shows me that it's the same group of people. We're not alone, but there's 120 new faces. There's even more out there. You're not alone. Just build that network. Make sure you meet the people from your town here and keep in touch with them afterwards. And then how to interact with older generations. As Mo asked, I've worked the last 3 going into the 4th summer with different governments, Fisheries and Oceans and the Forest Service. There's a lot of intergenerational issues there. Use their language. Find the common ground, but use their language. If they talk about fishing, go fishing with them. Build that relationship. And then while you're on the boat, just say, hey, what do you think about this whole fracking thing? But you got to be patient. You got to earn your feathers. That's a lot of it. A lot of the boomers have been in the same company or same career for 20 or 30 years. So it's not going to happen overnight. I'm a very impatient person. I've had to learn.
Okay, so with respect to building relationships with mentors or more senior people within your organization, find someone that you really connect with. So, that you just feel that connection to, and that they, it's a mutual connection over something, over anything. And also then learn how they like to be shown respect. Because everybody likes to be shown respect in different ways. And so from my own personal experience, I had one particular incredible mentor who, it's just a little thing, but he likes it if you reply to each email. If you reply to acknowledge that you've received the email, to thank him for taking the time, to thank him for sending the material that he sent to you, that goes a long way. And so it's about paying attention to the ways that you can show them that you respect them, that you respect their time. And also, one of the most important things is show how you can help them. Show that this relationship benefits them as well. Send them information that they may find useful. Try to lighten their workload. Help them with their projects, and you'll build a mutually beneficial, respectful relationship with that person. And then, the next question: how can we have the patience to stay in one place? I think that's definitely something that probably we all struggle with to varying degrees. Some people it's 6 months, some people it's 2 years, 5 years. But focus on the parts that you enjoy about what you're doing. Because nobody enjoys 100% of their job 100% of the time. But there are things that you will love doing about your job. So again, one example for me is I love writing op-eds for the newspaper. And I focus on that. And it's not even really part of my job description, but I do it and it benefits my supervisor, gets his work out. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. And so I come back to that and touch on that every now and then. Like, it's something that gets me really excited.
All right, I know we're probably running out of time, so I'll try and be concise here. I wanted to answer a couple questions. The first one is the intergenerational discussion and how we can interact with adults more effectively. So I think there are 3 things that have worked for me really well. One is to actually build those relationships outside of the work setting. So start making those contributions in informal discussions, and then you'll find that you'll start getting the ear and the voice to be able to do it in the formal areas that you want to. The second is contribute something from your personal experiences, because no one can argue with your personal experiences, and so this is something that can really be valuable to someone else's perspective. And then the last thing is, let's say you're working with a boss who has been doing what he's been doing for 25 years, right? How can you really compete with that level of experience? What I would do in that situation is present a perspective that's actually outside of that person's area of expertise. And if they feel less comfortable with that, they may be more willing to listen to you. And so I think these are all ways that can really make a difference in how you're perceived. And then the last thing on mentorship is just to build quickly on what everyone's been saying here. The one critical piece I found in a mentor is someone who's honest with you. So not afraid to tell you things like how they are. I had a mentor who used to tell me, Alima, this is not the right project for you. You need to think about building these skill sets because this is what you need to work on. And being able to internalize that feedback is something that'll be really valuable for you as you move forward in your careers.
Great. We have another question or comment from Mike.
So I'm going to change the process. Again, the organizers are going to kill me here. We're 15 minutes behind. But can I ask the panelists to politely stand up and face out the window for a second? Okay? That was a great idea that Gavin had.
Exercise, Mike.
Yeah. This is a great idea Gavin had that I really agree with, because these fantastic people, and you'll thank them in a sec, I'll let Lior wrap up in that, are going to represent you in front of a couple hundred people. Okay, put pressure on them. A few hundred people. So you have one vote, okay? One vote, and I want you to put up your hand to the person who you would select who best represents your voice, okay? So we're going to start on my left here with Rosalind. So who would vote for Rosalind, think she best represents? Okay? Okay, all right, the panelists got that? All right, kind of. Okay, and then Philip. Okay, and Niall. Okay, great, and Alima. Great, okay, thank you very much for that, thanks.
Oh, right. I was like, whoa, that was intense. Well, yeah, I feel like we could easily keep going here. This is a really interesting discussion. But it is my job to wrap it up and go to the next session. But firstly, before I do, I want to say a sincere thank you to Target, our sponsor for this event, for this session in particular, and really this live stream that we're doing today is made possible because of their support for this event. So thank you for that. I also wanted to let you know that if you are not a delegate of GLOBE, which starts tomorrow, that you could still attend the session where two of the panelists are going to be on this session called Beyond 2020, preparing the next generation of environmental leaders. You can still attend that. All you have to do is at lunchtime, go to the registration table right outside this door, and they'll give you a special pass to attend that session. If you are a GLOBE delegate, no worries. You're going to be there anyways, and definitely encourage you not to miss this.
Lior, if they're looking for jobs and they want to go walk the trade floor, that's, even if you're not a delegate, you can do that.
Thank you for adding that, Gavin. Yeah, that's a really good addition. So, yeah, check out what's happening this week if you're around, because it's a pretty spectacular trade show, absolutely. So we're going to call this session to a close. I'm going to introduce the moderator for the next session. Is Laura Smith in the room? Pardon? We're going to go for lunch. Yes? Okay. Apparently we are going for lunch, which is great. So, yeah, thank you very much. And again, catch the continuation of this panel at GLOBE on Thursday.